We got Linda Sarsour. She's going to kick a freestyle today on the show.
I'm going to do like a My Son. Like
You're going to kick
My Son the General.
No, he killed that freestyle. I actually did happen to see that. But I also saw him. I did an event uptown, or one of the colleges uptown for criminal justice reform. I was hosting a panel. I saw him there. Then I saw him on stage at the Women's March in DC. I was like, what's my son doing up there?
You know, my son is an evolved man. You know, he's doing politically, conscious hip hop, and we've been introducing him to young people in the movement. People are inspired by him. You know, he's a formerly incarcerated. He understands what it means to be on the inside.
Yeah. So we've never met, but I feel like I know you because I've just, every time you are speaking, whether it's at the MLK Now event or at the Women's March, I am just like drawn to you, maybe because we're both from Brooklyn and you
Right. It's the Brooklyn.
and also because you happen to be brilliant and you make a lot of sense and you get fired up and you make me get fired up.
Oh, I'm fired up today.
I know you are fired up today. So a couple of things that happened. So first of all, Linda is the co-chair of the Women's March on DC, and the Women's March has organized a demonstration that is happening today. So technically, you're seeing this today, but this is pre-recorded because today we are not working. And why are we not working?
We're not working because we as women got to start standing in our power and making a political statement. This country would not operate without us. The communities we live in would not operate without us. And we have misogynists, sexists in the White House who are trying to take our reproductive rights away, taking our health care away. Dr. Ben Carson just reduced funding to NYCHA housing. You know, after he said that black people were slaves were immigrants, don't get me started.
Is this like the Twilight Zone that we're in? I saw that. I didn't watch the news. I've been like detoxing a little bit from the news because I feel I was like getting depressed watching it every day. But then it's like you also don't want to be not informed.
Oh, I don't detox. I wake up every morning, open my social media, and be like, what am I going to be outraged about today? Every day there's something. Sometimes there's multiple things a day to be outraged about.
Yeah, but when I woke up and I saw that headline, I thought, this can't be life. Like, this can't be life.
It was actually outrageously crazy. But so I guess you could be a brilliant neurosurgeon, but that don't mean that you know anything about history. Doesn't mean you're smart. You
can have a very high position in Washington.
Yes, you can.
And it doesn't matter.
Without qualifications to be the secretary of the HUD that has to do with housing, and you're a neurosurgeon. Don't ask me. This whole thing is like the Twilight Zone. It don't make sense.
It's so weird. So you've been doing work for a long time, right? For the community. But I would imagine everything has kicked into another gear since our new president. Like, talk to me about your history before, by the way, so people who might not be familiar with what
I'm
you do.
a Brooklyn-born Muslim American. I went to John Jay High School, just a regular kid, lived in Sunset Park, grew up with a lot of Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, just had a great upbringing. And then 9/11 happened, and my community was immediately targeted by all levels of law enforcement, just kind of put our whole community as suspect. Somehow, because we were Muslim, we had something to do with the 9/11 attacks. And I was radicalized at that moment.
How old were you?
I was 20 when it happened, and I was radicalized at that moment as I watched men get picked up in my community's raids on the coffee shops and just watching. I'm like, what is this? Is this real life? Is this New York City? And I became a translator helping families connect to legal services. And then I went out in the world and I realized that it wasn't just my community that was getting targeted as Arab Americans, as Muslim Americans. Black people were being targeted by the very same law enforcement agencies. Latinos were getting targeted by the same law enforcement agencies. And all of a sudden, I found myself as part of a larger coalition, looking at police accountability, law enforcement accountability, building power together as communities and understanding that the only way we win is if we work together. So I've been doing that for 16 years, building with communities across New York. And then I went to the national level, doing that in communities across the country. And then the Women's March was an opportunity for me and other native New Yorkers like Tamika Mallory, who many people know, who's a sister in the struggle, and another sister, Carmen Perez, Chicana Latina. We just started organizing together. We became this beautiful trio. You have a Palestinian Muslim girl from Brooklyn. You got Tamika Mallory, she's African American. Carmen Perez is Chicana Latina. We started organizing together. We demonstrated what liberation intertwined looks like. So, you don't talk about my people in front of Tamika. Don't talk about Tamika's people in front of me or Carmen. And we went to the Women's March and became national co-chairs of the Women's March on Washington. And it is up until today is the largest protest in U.S. history, led by predominantly women of color from New York City. And we are hoping to go bigger and better.
Were you even surprised by the numbers?
Oh yeah, it was 4:00 in the morning when we showed up in Washington D.C., the area where the march was going to happen.
Yeah.
And people were already there. I
And
was
you were like, what?
What are you doing? And it was like a steady stream of people throughout the day. And then when it was our turn, me, Carmen, and Tamika, when it was our turn to speak on stage, I literally couldn't see the end of it. I could not see the last person. And what happened, in fact, is that we didn't have enough sound and jumbotrons, even though we spent a lot of money on those jumbotrons and sound, because we didn't know how many people were going to show up. We thought 250,000 people was a lot of people. We literally were like, if we get 250,000, we'll be amazing.
We did, right? That's great.
And we got MPD said that we had about 1.2 million people just in Washington D.C.
Wow.
500,000 in Chicago, 700,000 in a place like L.A. And then we had places like Anchorage, Alaska. We had Wise, Idaho, like places people are not known for organizing. I mean, it was beautiful. Boston was huge. Sarasota, Florida. You name the state, it happened in the state. We had over 400 sister marches in this country. And we also had over 6 million people worldwide. I mean, people in New Zealand, in Ghana, in Nairobi, Kenya, in parts of Europe. It was just the most amazing thing that I've ever seen.
It was so inspiring to see. It was one of those, I forget, I had something with my son that day, and I had heard that the march was happening, but I really wasn't in tune to date, time, organization of it or anything. So it was kind of like something that was happening in the background of my life at that time. And then it just hit me like a wave. Like I felt so disconnected to not be there, but I also felt so inspired watching it. And so moved by it. It really was beautiful. And it also made me feel like, okay, maybe there is hope. It made me feel somewhat hopeful.
You know what made me hopeful about it was that a lot of the people who we were organizing the march with, because it wasn't just me, Tamika, and Carmen. There was probably about 50 organizers, most of whom were living in New York, but others in other parts of the country. And of course, there were the 400 sister march organizers that organized the other marches that we were not a part of. They were like regular people. We're talking about yoga teachers, public school teachers. We had bakers. We had stay-at-home moms. It was like people who told us they never organized. And look what happens. You never organize, and then you end up organizing the largest protest in U.S. history. So it taught me, and it taught a lot of people, that everybody got potential to do something. So bring your skill to the table. And you know what? Maybe it took a Donald Trump to come to the White House. One of the things that Tamika said at the march that really moved me, and she said to people, she said, oh, now you're frustrated. Now you feel oppressed. Now you feel like you're going to be targeted. She's like, welcome to our world. Welcome to the world of Black people. Welcome to the world of undocumented and immigrant people. Welcome to the world of Muslims. Like, this is our world that we live in every day. So I say to people, I'm not going to ask you where you were when people have been oppressed in this country. I'm going to say welcome right now. And let's see if people stay consistent in their organizing against this administration.
Yes. And so from that led this a day without women.
A day without a woman.
A woman. I keep saying women. It's a day without a woman. And you're asking people to not show up financially. Or so what is the thinking? What is the I don't know, what is the takeaway for everyone?
So ever since the Women's March on Washington, we want to be consistent with the people that we've had connections to. We built a network of millions of people across this country, and we've done things before the Day Without a Woman. We've done the postcard campaign to your legislators, letting them know that you're watching them, that you're watching their votes. We did this campaign around what we call huddles, where it's like, how do you bring a small group of people in your community to have conversations with a toolkit about what you can do in your local community. We had over 6,000 registered huddles across the country. And then we want to introduce people to tactics, right? Because some people never engaged in a strike. They think a strike is something that is beyond them, or it's not something that anybody can do. So this is a introduction. And what we're asking women to do is, if you can, refrain from paid and unpaid labor. So if you're a stay-at-home mom, people say, well, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I say, you know how important your role is as a stay-at-home mom? You know what? You're not doing laundry that day. Let your boyfriend pick up your kids, or your partner, or your husband.
Right.
Like, don't cook dinner that day. Let your partner do it. So even for people who don't have a job, if you're a college student, like, don't go to school that day. It's people sometimes think when we're absent. No, when you're absent from somewhere, people ask where you are, why you're not here. It's a political statement. So of course people have said, Linda, you know, that sounds really privileged. Like, you privileged not to go to work.
Yeah.
You know? But it really erases history. Like, we have had farm workers who are low-wage workers say, we refuse to pick the produce until you give us workers' protection. We've had fast food workers across this country, low-wage workers, say, no, we're willing to risk our job to demand a $15 minimum wage for everybody. So it's always been those who have the most to lose who have always risked more than everybody else. But then people want to tell me about privilege. But we did take that into consideration and said, okay, we give you 3 ways to participate. One is refrain from paid and unpaid labor. The second is don't spend your money. Women are of the top group of consumers in this country. We pour millions of dollars a day into this country, food shopping, malls, boutiques, whatever it is that what we buy for lunch, whatever. Don't shop that day. Keep your money in your wallet that day. It's a very empowering opportunity to show people our economic power as women in this country. And the third way is, and a lot of the male allies are like, we going to work, we'll pick up the kids, but how are we going to show solidarity? Number one, yes, picking up the kids and making lunch and breakfast for the kids, that's solidarity. But we ask people to wear red in solidarity with us. Red is a color of revolution, of resilience, of love. And you will see tomorrow, or you will see on A Day Without a Woman, which is March 8th, a sea of women wearing red in New York City. And hopefully our allies, our male allies, join us in that effort.
Yes. And so there's a Central Park gathering. It's going to be big. I feel it.
Look, everything we do is big. That's just how it is. It's 12 o'clock, 59th Street, 5th Avenue, by the park by the Plaza Hotel. There's going to be a lot of people there. And it's going to be people who are, again, standing in their power and sending out a political statement, not just to our administration, but even locally. Like, stuff ain't straight in New York either. This is an opportunity for people to show local power. And these are going to be New Yorkers who are going to come stand in solidarity.
Best case scenario, like, what is the takeaway for people after everybody shows up and delivers and participates?
There's a lot of best case scenarios, and the impact has already started. We have an entire school district in Alexandria, Virginia, that's shutting down because of A Day Without a Woman. It is because so many teachers have asked for the day off. We have a whole school district in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, that has shut down because they had to. Economically, they could not find, first of all, logistically, they couldn't find enough substitute teachers. They just don't have those in stock.
Right.
And economically, being able to pay substitute teachers in comparison what you pay salary-wise a teacher for the day, it would economically bankrupt the district.
Wow.
So that actually shows the power, because women are a big portion of the education system. So it's an opportunity. The best case scenario is for local, city governments to be like, oh man, if these women keep on with this, like, we're just not going to be able to operate. They're just going to bankrupt us. We need to understand what they're looking for, what they need. And people say, what do you want? We want very basic things. We still live in a country where women don't get paid the same as men for the same work. Like, that's just the basics, right?
Financial equality,
pay equity, very simple to me. And we live in a democracy, and we live in a country supposedly that cares about women's rights. Let's start acting like we care about women's rights.
Okay.
Number two, it's very simple to me that women in this country deserve access to health care.
Yes.
Do not play with my reproductive rights. Don't tell me what I deserve and what I don't deserve. In particular, when they talk about reproductive rights in groups like Planned Parenthood, what they're saying is that women of color and poor people and poor women don't deserve access to health care. So those two big areas that are very specific to women. But we're also asking for...
I feel like people use that specific issue to divide.
Absolutely.
Because there are women that are, pro-rights, pro-life.
They did that to us at the Women's March on Washington. It had many media outlets, particularly mainstream media, that were like, so does that mean that pro-life women are not invited? They're not included? I said, you got to listen to me really carefully. We are a pro-choice movement. So if you are a woman that wants to keep your baby, we respect you and respect your decision. If you are a woman that after a very hard, because people think it's easy that when women get abortion, they don't understand the emotional distress that goes with making a decision like that. If you choose to have an abortion, we respect your choice. So this is it's not about pro-life or pro-abortion. It's about pro-choice, that women have the right to choose for themselves. And we want to maintain that right, because there were women who died for our right to be here. And cases like Roe versus Wade, when we have an administration that's about to appoint a Supreme Court justice that could take us back 60 years. We're not trying to go back. We're trying to move forward.
It's unbelievable.
And we're also talking about immigration. We've seen this in New York City recently. We had over 71 people in New York City be picked up by ICE. We don't need ICE in our communities terrorizing our children, deporting a mother a wife that went to a court to get a restraining order, and she gets detained at the court as a victim of violence, or a young man who has deferred action as a legal status, that was in Chicago. Like, we are living in a country where we need undocumented people, where they contribute to our society. They contribute to our Social Security when they're not even going to benefit from Social Security benefits. They contribute with sales tax in places like New York. They contribute billions of dollars. And it's not about money for me, but this is the argument given to those who are in opposition. They're human beings with families. They come here because of poverty, of war, of conflict. And here we are telling the very people who are looking for safety and sanctuary in one of the world's largest democracies, oh, we don't want you here. Go back to violence, go back to rape, go back to war. It's just ridiculous. So I think, generally speaking, this is an opportunity to show that women are powerful. We didn't get the first woman president. But you know what? That doesn't mean that we don't have women leadership and that we've always had women leadership in this country.
Yeah. It's so infuriating, all of it. I don't know how you work at the pace that you do. I find it so inspiring. It's like I tell you, to stay aware of every day something crazy that comes in. That alone, it's like wearing. So when I see people like you who are doing the work every single day, like, it's very inspiring.
It's fueled by outrage. Let me tell you. Like, this administration gives you the fuel of outrage every single day. Like, I can't believe that we live in a country where we're even fighting for like basic things. Like, we have other countries who have universal health care. People aren't crying for health care. Other places, they got free public education. They got free public college. Like, here we are in this country where we have people who die just because they don't have health insurance. Very basic. It's really sad, actually.
Are we gonna get? Do you think we'll have a new president in 3 years?
Girl, I hope it's like one.
Are you trying to get him out? Do you think that's possible?
I mean, I don't.
He's
have
really done enough to be out.
Well,
already,
yeah, like, I don't even got to try. That brother is digging his own hole every single day. He's like holding that shovel in his hand.
What does it take? What does it take to impeach a president at this point? Like,
this administration, Angie, is the epitome of white privilege. You better believe if President Obama was talking to the Russians or was engaging in any type of behavior that this president is engaging right now, you know, like accusing a former president of white. I mean, every day there's something. President Obama would not have saw the 5th day in office. Like, I cannot believe that we even got to this stage. You know, he's appointing people with no qualifications. You're appointing white supremacists to the White House. You allowed Steve Bannon to be on the National Security Council and took the generals off. Like, what?
No, it's
like, I can't even believe that the American people are just like, well, that's pretty horrible.
Why do you think that is? You think uninformed? Do you think exhausted? I think there's an exhausted thing that's happening. I think it's like they're rocking you to sleep because it's like you get outraged and then you get outraged again tomorrow and then next week. And it's tiring. It's tiring, which is why when I see people like you
I mean, I ain't going to lie to you. I'm exhausted.
You got to be tired.
I'm still, I think I'm exhausted, but I'm outraged. And maybe the mix of that keeps me going. But what I'll say is the reason why is because people are apathetic in this country. Like, when I look at the last election, everyone's like, oh, well, he didn't win the popular vote. Majority of people that we're not talking about are the ones that didn't go to the polls. Like, the ones that were like, nah, we're just not going to vote. Like, that is why we are in the situation that we're in right now. We also have we've been taught in this country that the power don't lay in the hands of the people. The power is in the hands of corporations. It's in the hands of those in government. So we've been the agency has been taken away from people. People are like, this is just how it is. Like, why are we going to fight? We're going to waste our time. We're not going to win. And unfortunately, in some sense, that is kind of true. Like, there are people who just believe like, all right, so Black people, you know, they've been here for 460 years and they've been oppressed all this time. We have been watching people in Black communities, Latino communities being killed at the hands of law enforcement for decades or maybe for centuries, right?
Right.
Why would it change now? People are also feeling trauma, especially communities of color. They're like, why are you out here fighting? Martin Luther King was fighting like 50 years ago and before him 150 years ago. Like, it's just this is just what this country is about. And me personally, like, I understand the history of this country, but I'm like, I want to be different. Why can't we be different? Why can't we be that generation?
You still believe?
I still got that hope in my heart. I don't know where it comes from, but I just really believe in the potential of my generation, a generation that is intersectional, a generation that is progressive, that sees, like, when I'm organizing I'm organizing with Ramali Graham's mother. Like, I'm a mom too. I got a 17-year-old son. Like, I see her son in my child. Like, this is the generation that I come from. You know, when I have people when I'm not in the room and people are like, no, I don't like what's happening to my Muslim sisters and brothers. You know, this idea that we show up for each other even when we are not in those rooms is really inspiring to me. So I don't know. I still have hope. And I feel like, to me, Donald Trump is like a blessing in disguise. It did wake up a lot of people that were sleeping and kind of, like you said, they were just kind of tranquilized by the moment. And now all of a sudden you get a white supremacist, sexist, misogynist, rapist in the White House and everyone's like, oh, this is so outrageous. And I'm like, y'all,
right, this
welcome.
is where I draw the line.
Yeah, you're like, I'm like, okay,
the line.
glad you're awake now. Yeah, exactly. That's where people draw the line.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, is that what it took? Yeah, so it's
okay,
crazy.
but welcome.
Oh, we'll take you now. We need all hands on deck.
We need all hands on deck.
all hands on deck.
And so what is the mission, though? The mission is to get him out?
I think the mission right now is to continue to build consistent power. Like, for example, right after the Women's March on Washington, you know, he put out that executive order on the Muslim ban. Mm-hmm. And you saw people showed up at JFK Airport. They were at amazing. DTW, at Dallas Airport. They were like, you better let them in. Mm-hmm. And that powerful, visible organizing caused the Deputy Attorney General to be like, this is unconstitutional. Then she got fired. But the point is, A deputy attorney general in this country said this is unconstitutional. And then immediately on Monday, which was like 2 days after the ban, we launched a lawsuit against Donald Trump and his administration. I'm a lead plaintiff in a lawsuit, Sarsour versus Trump. We're going to take this brother to court, and we're going to teach him how the system is supposed to work. I mean, it doesn't always work for everybody, those courts and the justice system. But we got to do what we have.
The fact that she got fired.
It's like that. I mean, come on, like, don't be too obvious now. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
with it's like that is as flagrant as it gets. If you disagree with me,
no, it's
get fired.
Angie, it's like we got to be real and we got to name it, right? It's called fascism. It's when this abuse of power, this idea that you can do whatever you want, this scolding of the media, like trying to keep out some mainstream media, keep some in. That's just the early signs of fascism. That is when you see an administration, he thinks he's a dictator. He thinks he can do things the way he wants to do them. And that's not possible. I mean, what I'm hoping and what the Women's March is going to be focusing on is building political power. It starts at the local level. The reason why we're worried is because the House is Republican, the Senate is Republican, and the White House is Republican. So you got 3 branches of a government, very important, that are all representing only one political party that oftentimes is in opposition to everything that we stand for as communities of color. And then on top of that, we're like, all right, at least we got the Supreme Court. I'm like, Ruth, you better stay healthy, child, do yoga, eat, whatever, because we got one open seat in that Supreme Court.
Right.
And they're about to appoint someone. But if we lose one more, that's it. We're done. We don't have an equal. It's not going to be a tie. It's going to be we're going to lose. And they're going to take back voting rights. They're going to take back LGBTQ rights. They're going to take back,
women's rights.
Women's reproductive rights. Like, we are going to be in a really bad situation if people don't wake up. So what we're hoping happens, at least in 2018, is that people realize that you better take yourself to the polls. Put your little self-righteous politics to the side, because this ain't about you right now. It's about everybody. You got to do collective voting. And at least in some parts of the country, we're going to have to win some of those seats back and put some Democrats who are progressive in those.
I was going to say, who are we lifting up? Like, if you could put somebody in the White House.
Oh, I mean, I would put everybody at the Women's March. I would love to see a Carmen, a Tamika. But actually, we got people that are running across this country that I think are super inspiring. Like, I have a refugee, young sister who came here. She was undocumented. Wendy Carrillo. She's running for Congress in
West Coast.
Yeah, from the West Coast. You know her. Yeah, she's fabulous. She was a Bernie surrogate too, a Bernie supporter. So I'm supporting her out in LA. I mean, the other thing that people don't know is that the governorships. People are like, who cares? What does the governorships have to do? We got 32 Republican governors. All we need is 34 for them to call a conference of states where they can change the Constitution. Like, this is some serious stuff that people got to know about. Like, they can literally go in and change the Constitution.
And they need 34?
They only need 34.
And they have 32.
32. So if in the next governor race, which is 2018, that's next year, if they win 2 more seats, we are done. Like, the fact that people can go in and change the Constitution, that already like shivers my bones.
No,
so,
it might feel nauseous.
Yeah. So there is so much. The Supreme Court appointments, like, so people think this is like nerdy, like you got to be smart to know this stuff. No, you don't got to be smart. You just got to be aware.
I'm not that smart.
No, I'm saying got to be aware what's going on.
I'm not that smart at all. And I'm not somebody who grew up in a house that we watch the news. I'm not somebody who was like grew up in a family that was like politically savvy or knowledgeable or activist or. But at this point, like, we all, no matter where you come from, it's like we all have to just at least be aware and at least do whatever we can to use our voices.
Anything. We need about anything right now. I mean, I tell people all the time.
I had no idea about that, what you just told me about the
governors.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's nightmare after nightmare. Like, we could really be in a much more, people think it's bad now. This is nothing.
Okay, but that's something. It's very specific that we can actually explain and work towards preventing.
Yeah. We need to either maintain what we got, which is 32, or make sure that no other Republicans beat other Democrats in the current 32 that we have. Like, it is really serious what we're up against right now, especially in electoral politics. And the thing about our communities, a lot of our community, they're like, we don't believe in this electoral system. It's all rigged, it ain't, this system wasn't built for, all that. Like, I get it, and I understand the frustrations that people have, but people also have to understand that on a local level, on a state level, like the presidential stuff, put that to the side. That whole electoral college and all that stuff is not straight. Like, I understand, I'm all about changing that. But on the local level, the governors, the state legislators, your city council, like your mayors, y'all better get on that. It's important.
Can you come here like all the time and school us on a bunch of things that we need to know? You're right in Brooklyn.
Scary.
No, I mean it. Like, I really would love for us to have an open communication and and be able to help and support you.
I would love to,
and
Andrew. We love everything. We love everything about you. I feel like
Thank
I know
you.
you because I listen to you all the time. And I
Thank
get to be
you.
at a space with
Thank
you,
you.
so thank you.
I know you walked in. I was like, Linda. I felt like I knew you too. I was like, wait a minute. I don't know if we've ever actually met. So tomorrow I'm not coming to work. I won't be here. Angela Yee's sitting out as well. I'm gonna head down to Central Park and see what's happening there, and we can invite everybody to do that as well.
Give you a mic over there.
Okay, I really want to listen and learn, but if you want me to get on the mic, I will do that as well. And we just hope everybody participates in A Day Without a Woman and let the whole world know how important we are and our voices.
We are very important.
Word.